G'day everyone and welcome to this week's episode of the Scale HQ podcast with Talila Kroy from Emple. They basically help founders, particularly those in like 7 and 8 figures, build scalable sales systems. So they specialize in helping businesses who've probably never actually hired salespeople before or are early in their journey who need a bit of support to build all the sales foundations that they need in place to ensure that when they do recruit a salesperson, that person succeeds. And they also go and help recruit the salespeople, and they will also help manage the salespeople, like outsource sales directors. Really interesting business, and I've known them for a little while. The reason I wanted to have this conversation today was it is absolutely a requirement that you have a scalable sales system if you're going to scale into 8 figures. You're not going to get past $10 million off the back of just reputation, word of mouth, and referrals. Like, it works for a while, and you'll get to 5 to 10 million without a scalable sales model. But at some point, you're going to end up recruiting salespeople. And when you recruit salespeople, you need training and compensation plans and all the assets that they're going to sell on and how to have the right conversations and a system for thinking about all the metrics and reverse engineering your sort of backwards plan for how many calls and how many meetings and what conversion rates and all that stuff. All of those sales foundations need to be in place. And so today's conversation, if you are a founder who's either never hired a salesperson before, never managed a salesperson before, which I know many people listening to this haven't, this is a super instructive episode for you, and you're going to learn a hell of a lot about the things you need to have in place so you can have some really good practical takeaways. And then I'm going to do another interview with Talila very soon where we unpack the sales recruitment side. So once you've actually got all the foundations in place, now it's time to go and find a salesperson. What are the secrets of doing the sales recruitment right so you can make sure you don't blow your dough and get the wrong person? It's such a high risk hire. Bringing salespeople into your organization, but it's so important. And once you've got the model and it works, you can just add fuel to it and just hire more salespeople. So I think you're going to love this episode. Really enjoyed it. It's super practical. And Talila's got a great sort of leave behind or sort of free tool for you to use at the end. So make sure you listen all the way through. Okay, enjoy today's episode with Talila Kroy from Emple. Welcome to the Scale HQ podcast, your weekly injection of tips and insights into the secrets of scaling. I'm your host, Sean Steele, and I am obsessed with figuring out how to help founders just like you who are creating real value in the world to scale up so they can fulfill their potential. I do that each week by interviewing founders who successfully scaled, experts in all the areas of business that you need to master, interviews with founders who are still on the way up, and 10-minute tutorials and reflections from me based on my experiences in creating $100 million in revenue for 4 other companies over 8 years. So let's dive in and see what gems we can find together on this week's episode of the Scale HQ podcast. G'day everybody and welcome back to the Scale HQ podcast. If you are a regular listener, we massively value you tuning in every week. And if you are joining us for the first time, well, welcome. We are thrilled to have you. My guest this week is Talila Kroy, co-founder and director of Emple, a business that helps Australian companies build scalable sales engines, which just gets me all kinds of excited, even just saying the words, Talila. So, and that means for you guys, when you think scalable sales engine, you're thinking like people and process and technology and strategy and performance and all of that, right?
Have to get to one thing that's scalable, that's repeatable. That's right, Sean. Exactly.
Scalable and repeatable sales. No one wants that, do they? No, it's scalable, repeatable
Absolutely
sales.
not. Who would want to have the money flowing in so you could actually focus on realizing your vision?
It's classic. Well, look, we came across each other, just for context for the audience, came across each other when your co-founder and I connected. And
Yes.
And part of the reason for the connectivity was it's very often that Scale HQ clients who are typically 7-figure founders, wanting to scale to 8 figures plus, get to somewhere around, in my experience, 4 million to 9 million in revenue off the back of great work, great founder reputation, good delivery, founder-led sales, referrals, word of mouth. But to break into 8 figures, you must, and I repeat, must have a scalable inbound or outbound or both, ideally, sales system that gives you predictability and levers that you can pull to amplify and scale your sales. Otherwise, you plateau and the business just stops growing. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely, Sean. And from the conversations we've had, I know you have quite a lot of knowledge in this area already. Like, you've seen this and you've been involved in these implementations. So that will make our conversation all the more interesting, I think.
That's it. Well, look, word of mouth only gets you so far. It's an incredible way to build a business. And it tells me that you've got a quality business. If you can get to that stage and you've
Yes,
got no sales function, awesome. Like, you're
that's
doing
true.
a great job. Pat yourself on the back. That's incredible. You're just not going to continue growing at the same rate until you've got something that's actually predictable. And that means it needs to have structure and it needs to have other people. And it's it's not as, if only it was as simple as just going out and hiring some salespeople, and they would just bring sales process and sales management and sales systems and CRMs and
Exactly.
all the other
And
stuff. Sorry, that is
unfortunately,
actually the founder's job.
and really, Sean, that's what people think it is. Many business founders who do hire for the first time do have quite unrealistic
Mm-hmm.
expectations of what the salesperson's going to bring. They do believe that if I
Yeah.
could get this far and I'm not a salesperson, then if I hire a salesperson, they're going to do a far better job than I ever did. So, wow, my sales are going to go up. I'm
Yes.
hiring a professional. And then they find that,
Mm-hmm. And I know that you are. I know there are so many people listening to this today, Talila, who are hearing themselves in this conversation already, going,
yes,
well, surely if I've never been trained in sales and I hire a professional salesperson at like 120 grand or 150 grand or something like that, they are going to bring sales process and stuff. No, they are not going to do that. I don't care
they
how experienced they are. They may have worked in all sorts of other people's sales infrastructure and sales process and all the rest, but it doesn't mean they bring it to you. It doesn't mean they know how to design it. That doesn't mean they know how to design it in a way that suits your organization. They are not the best salesperson for your organization yet. And they actually need to have a whole bunch of other things in place for them to succeed. Otherwise, you are going to spend a lot of time and a lot of frustration watching them have conversations and it not going anywhere. And you're going to think hiring salespeople was the wrong strategy, as opposed to going, I did not set these people up for success. And there's two parts to this, right? Like, the conversation today that I wanted to have with you was, and we were having a little chat offline. I think what we've decided is there probably needs to be 2 episodes, not 1, because the setup for this was, Talila, I want you to tell our audience the secrets of how to hire good salespeople, which is the front end of that process. The
Yes,
recruiting
very
of the
true.
salespeople. What do you look for? How do you test for the right fit and your skills and all the other stuff?
Yes.
But what I've seen many times over, and I know you've seen countless more times, is people hire a salesperson, but actually when they land, there is nothing set up for them. And that means that person will fail. No question, they're going to fail.
That's correct.
So we actually decided the context is still the same. It's how do you recruit the right salespeople? But what we're going to start with is, what do you need on the other side of that as an organization to ensure that when they land, you can actually get them to succeed before you worry about going and finding the right ones, because you're not going to find a magic unicorn who brings all the stuff with you.
That is spot on. That is spot on. Absolutely spot on.
Rockin'. Well, let's just get into it. Like, you talked to me about, maybe could you just give us a little, quick summary of just the bits that Emple does? Because I know you also, and the thing I like about your organization is that you came out of sales recruitment first, and that was your job, and you were doing sales recruitment before you then started thinking about, hang on, these salespeople are getting to people's organizations and then failing. Why? Not because the salesperson's wrong, because the organization doesn't have the stuff set up yet. So talk to me, just quick sort of summary of Emple and what you do, and then let's talk about what have they got to have on the other side of this before they hire the salesperson.
Okay, excellent. So we started our business, we were called Epic Sales Hire, and then we molded into Epic Sales Group, and then we rebranded as Emple. Our purpose was to free founders by hiring those really great salespeople that would take those founders to the next level, basically enable them to get out of client-facing interactions and into strategy and make the money that they needed. And we spent a couple of years just hiring really good salespeople, doing nothing else, through a process that we'll talk about later, Sean, which other people can use, which is really sifting out the wheat from the chaff for your organization, which is very important. What we found, though, again and again, was that 1 + 1 didn't equal 2 with hiring salespeople. In other words, we could put one salesperson into a financial services company over here and another one into a financial services company over there, both of good quality, similar resumes, who passed the assessments correctly and done similar things, and one would struggle, flounder, and have a very stressful ramp up and maybe fail. And the other one would just get in and just do it, and they'd be up and running in weeks. And that was a real light bulb moment for us. I think the biggest example of that for us came in year 2, where we were actually hiring, year 3, I think it was, we were hiring for a Queensland company that did floor coverings. And they timbered floor coverings, quite unique, sort of clicked together, highest quality. But their competitors were like Bunnings, things like that. They were probably 5 to 7 times the price. And we'd hired 2 BDMs for this company. And the BDMs just weren't able to sell the way the founder could. And a few months in, the founder was saying neither of them are closing deals. They're opening all these invoices. They're speaking to all these people. They're filling up my system with quotes and invoices, but nothing is selling. And what we ended up doing with that founder was saying, you know what? You don't have all of these things in place. And he became like a guinea pig for us. We created him what we call a sales environment and sales playbook. And the transformation was unbelievable. He actually got rid of those 2 BDMs because they were burnt by then. And he and his admin lady and his logistics guy, basically we pulled out of his head everything that worked and set up the system for success, and they were making ridiculous sales. And they smashed it that September, October, November, December, January. Every month they exceeded their sales targets. And that's when we realized you can try your hardest to get a really, really good person, but if you don't give them a really, really good system, you will never get the results you want. And on the converse, if you have a really, really good system, even an average person will probably get you the results you want.
You'll get somewhere.
Light bulb moment for us. Yeah.
That's so, it's so true in so many ways. Even as a professional sales manager, which I was kind of going through my career, I'd spent my whole life in sales, right? Which is why, to your earlier point, I do know a bit about this area. I'm not the expert because I don't spend my time all in sales anymore. But I had a contact center, a 70-seat contact center in Brisbane, and I'd been focusing on integrating multiple brands of salespeople into a centralized sales area. So we're recruiting some new people, bringing some other people in, and all the rest. What I didn't have was any, good quality training, onboarding process, whatever. So like we were bringing salespeople in, and I was assuming that we had these good sales managers and they'd sort of get them up to speed. And the average time to competency, and competency for us was like getting them to about 27 to 30 enrollments a month. That's what we needed them to get to for it to be, for everything to work. And it would take them about 6 months to get to that level. And I was like, 6 months is so long. And sometimes I'd get to month 5 and we go, no, this person's not going to make it. And we've burnt 5 months, we've burnt 2 months or 2 to 3 months in recruitment, and then 5 months of salaries, and then we let them go. And I was like, this model does not work. And so I built a sales university, got a learning management system, I got like an instructional designer. I designed all the content, worked with the sales managers, we put it all together. And all of a sudden, we got the speed to competency from 6 months to 4 weeks.
Exactly.
And by week 3, we knew whether people were going to succeed or not. And by week 3, they were gone. If they were not going to work, they had left. And so massive improvement. Why? Because the onboard, all of the stuff was there. The onboarding, teaching what success looks like, bringing up the competency. Like we designed the system and the system worked. And so, yeah, I'm all aboard. So let's talk about what is this magical stuff that needs to be on the other side of this sales recruitment that founders probably don't know about when they've just grown a business off the back of word of mouth referrals, the founder's charisma, and whatever else.
Yes, very, very good. And a great example, what you said. It's a great example. And we found the same things. You could take out all the risk, go from 6 months to several weeks. You could even get people started before they sign up. You could use parts of that training to help recruit and help sort the wheat from the chaff. And so when they land on site, send me locked and loaded.
Moving.
Yeah. So let's look at some of those parts, as you say, Sean. So there's a few different elements to this, and let me break them down because they all work together. There's the training, like you said, which is what do you say and why do you say it and how do you say it, an understanding of who are our buyers, where do we sit in the marketplace, what are the deepest value that our solutions offer and why, and equipping them with, assets, resources, stories, statistics, everything that you as the founder or, your best key salesperson have known for years. Because otherwise, if we expect a salesperson to absorb that by osmosis, it's a hit and miss process and it will literally take them months and they will have to be very good at listening and picking things up. Also, from a brand experience, if you're giving the client one experience and the other salesperson is giving them, you've got 2 people there maybe that this new person is trying to practice on, they might learn 2 different ways. And there's different brand experience, there's confusion from them. And we see it all the time as teams grow and grow. So really, that training element of who are our buyers, what do we say, how do we hold sales conversations, how do we qualify, what are the key tells that we need to provide the buyer, what are the light bulb moments, how do we move the sale from stage to stage? That's really, really important stuff. But then there's lots of other structural pieces too. So let's have a little bit of a look at those. And I've made a couple of notes for myself. Firstly, one of the things that I think business owners struggle with is, how do I remunerate the salesperson? And that's a really important one. They overpay or they underpay, or sometimes they give commission from the first dollar. Sometimes they pay for things that might come anyway, or it wasn't really clear what the salesperson did. Other times, a salesperson might have to do a lot of work for very little remuneration. So it's really important that your remuneration framework pays the salesperson just enough for their base to be competitive, gives them a really rewarding, commission structure, and that the commission structure is tied to and aligned to the amount of effort, the amount of skill, and where you want the revenue to come from. This is really, really important. And if you get that right, we had about 3 years ago, we had to hire a BDM for a new rent roll for a company in the Gold Coast. And they were investment homes type of thing. They were building a rent roll on the side. And literally, that's hard work. They didn't have anyone coming in. It was really outbound. This person had to go out and do it. And they needed someone really, really good. And they wanted to pay a 60K base a few years ago. And, the people of that quality were 80, 90 plus base. And so what we did was we worked with them for a really, really good commission structure that rewarded really well based on performance. And we showed how that would work. Like, we reverse engineered the pipeline. I'll talk about that in a minute. And we were able to get them someone amazing from Brisbane. She took a step down from the 85 base to 65, which is what we negotiated. And she smashed it. And within about 9 months, they'd had to hire extra people. She was at more than double what we'd expected her to get. Everyone was smiles and everyone was very, very happy. And that's the power of a good, remuneration framework.
I have got so many stories about compensation design fails,
yes,
that I have personally made, and ones that I've done that have been incredible successes. And I mean, that's a whole episode, just compensation
it's a whole
design
episode,
and getting
probably.
it right. It's because it's an art and a science, right? Like,
yes.
But fundamentally, you can create incredibly lazy sales. To your point, one of the first, I don't even know if this is legal anymore, and it probably never was. But anyway, I always used to ask people, what is the minimum amount that you need just to run your life, to your costs, forget investments and savings and all the rest, but like the minimum amount per year that you need to just pay the bills, keep the lights on. Because and people would always actually give you a really honest answer, which I always found really interesting.
They would.
Fabulous.
They do.
But all of a sudden, someone says, I remember they had a job that was a $75,000 base, and they said to me, $42,000. And I was thinking, the base itself is for them $30,000 more than they need. How motivated are they going to be by any commission? Zero.
That's
and
really
big surprise.
Yeah.
They were not. But so anyway, let's not get too tied into that one. But there's a whole big dialogue for us around that. Okay, so the training and all the assets and everything that go with the right sales conversation.
Yes.
Then the compensation plan, the remuneration model. Then
yes. I'll say one more thing on the remuneration model before we go from that. A really powerful way of remunerating a salesperson, and there's a lot of industries where you can do it, is to provide a trail on income, so that every year as they grow their book of clients and renewals, etc., it doesn't fit every model, but often it does, they actually pay themselves more money. And this is incredibly rewarding for a salesperson, particularly an enterprising one, because they can envisage their future and they can build something for themselves. And as you know, great salespeople tend to leave after a couple of years if they're bored and if there's no way to move up the ladder. Yes. And in small businesses, there isn't often a way to move up the ladder, except maybe to the sales manager of the team. But this way, they can actually give themselves a raise, if that makes sense. And that's exciting. So I wanted to mention that. So another thing that we really, really, really need is to get our quotas right and to have measurable metrics that we can use when we're managing the salesperson. Because particularly business founders, they're not necessarily trained in managing a salesperson. It's a very new area for them. It's a very new hat to put on. And I've seen lots of different styles. One of them is, here's the stuff, abdicate and run, kind of approach. Really doesn't work. Other one is, leaning over their shoulder and micromanaging them because you're anxious, which also is really, really not good, and a large variety of things in between. But the biggest problem that business owners have is calling out the salesperson when they're off track and congratulating them when they're on track, and having really objective conversations about how they're doing all the time so that they can adjust course and be aligned on getting to the goal of ramp. And that's tricky, and you need metrics for it. And I think that's really important.
And because, fundamentally what a lot of people end up doing is focusing on the outputs only and not focusing on the inputs. And it's like, if you're not focused on the parts of the process that are going to produce outcomes and you're just focused on outcomes, then the salesperson is feeling terrible all the time until there's a deal. You're thinking there's something wrong with them until there's some massive number. And no one's focused on actually the things they should be doing that will produce in time, if they do them consistently, some outcome later on. And that's where that weekly dialogue is, right? Like, the calls they're doing and the meetings they're doing and the quality of that deal and what's happening, anyway.
And really, if that salesperson is confident, they will perform much better. If they're stressed, we all know that our stress levels actually cause our intelligence to drop. And in many environments, salespeople are very stressed for the first 6 months because it's a make or break, and it's not like hiring a dentist or something like that. You went to dentist school, you know how to do stuff, you're in a new environment, but the tools are basically the same, and the chances of you being kicked out after 6 months are low. So with a salesperson, they're looking at you. Are you going to make it? And if we could take that stress away by giving clear metrics and clear guidance, the salesperson will flourish, and they love the visibility of how they're doing. So where do the metrics come from is the question. So the first thing is the quota itself.
And sorry, just one point on that. Your onboarding plan needs to build both their competence and their confidence.
Yes.
Which is why, if I've got an 8-week onboarding plan or a 12-week onboarding plan, in weeks 2 and 3, they're calling previous customers. They're doing customer service calls. They're doing ride-alongs. And it's like those things are all metric, and, 5 calls of this type, 16 customer mystery calls, so that they can get to the end of the week, tick that they've done 16 and feel excited, like feel confident because they've done something that they can tick off the plan, not just, you need to get me $1 million somewhere in the next 12 months, go, and then all of a sudden it's just like, it's all failure until that is a tick. That's a terrible model.
And not only failure, they don't know what levers to pull because they're brand new.
Yeah.
So they will literally get scatterbrained, and their energy will go all over the place trying to figure out what to do. So giving them the levers to pull, and the onboarding plan itself, the ramp-up plan, is a part of these, right? So just moving back to the targets for a minute, there's 2 sets of targets. There's the quota, which is basically a rearview mirror. Yes, you sold this much, right? Very good. Well done. And then there's, as you say, the KPIs, or the leading indicator, the drivers, the key drivers.
Yeah.
Those are the ones that are the inputs, and both of those we need to have measured. So to create quotas, and a lot of businesses don't do this, they'll just set up an arbitrary number like, well, last year I sold 500,000, so you're a salesperson, you're going to do it full time. I expect you to sell 1 million. That's nice. What we need is the same approach to sales as marketing people have, which is a funnel and the stages. And, $1 million in sales is usually, 100 of our products, or 100 small ones, 50 big ones, and 25 medium offerings. And that's aligned with what we usually get, something like that. Historical data shows this. So you've got to do a little bit of work, but it's not a lot, and it will give you an enormous amount of insight. So you need to look at who you're selling to, what's your average sale value, and then look at what are the stages of your sales process. Like, what are you actually doing? How many conversations do you have to have in order to create that sale? And how many meetings, and how many, whatever it is that happens. Sale is not one thing. Usually in B2B, it's a series of steps. And those steps have names, and those steps have conversion metrics. So, a lot of our clients will start with an initial conversation, which might be a very short chat, just to either spark interest or identify it. And then they might go on to a longer conversation where they're gathering a lot of data from the client whilst answering questions to make sure this is a fit, and they can present a customized solution. And then they'll have a meeting and say, this is what you need, this is what we propose, et cetera, et cetera. And then post the meeting, they might send a quote, proposal, invoice, Then there's an onboarding phase. Those are all the phases of a journey. And from those, there's conversion metrics. And, the stronger your sales process, the better conversions will go. So the initial chats will more often go into the deep dives, which will more often go into the presentations, and more people will say yes. That process, if it's built and documented, forms the training that you set, but it also provides the metrics. Because if you've got a pipeline, you've got a CRM, you know historically what you do. And you don't have to say, I expect you to sell $1 million worth. You can say, I expect you to sell $1 million worth, and it's based on the fact that our conversion rate is this, our lead sources are that, and our average sale value is that. And this is not something new. This is a proven model. And that gives a salesperson
you to do, 10 meetings a week, which should result in 5 proposals of probably about this amount of value. And those 5 proposals will probably turn into 3 deals, and those 3 deals will be worth this much. And that's how we actually get to this number. So the salesperson's also going, oh, okay, well, that makes sense. Like that builds their confidence in the target. Basically. And they're thinking, I just need to do the 10 meetings and follow the bouncing ball that you've given me, and then apply my personality and skill set to it, because I've actually got a model of success first.
Sure. They now can allocate their time. They now can see success long before the sale. They can build a pipeline successfully, a forecastable pipeline, and that's really important. More than that, you could see whether they're doing the activities, and you can also see whether they're converting at the right rate. The activities is quantity, conversion is quality. And if they're failing at any of those, you can say, well, you converted all right, but you only had 5 calls. That's not enough. You're going to need to have 10. Or you did 10 calls, but you didn't get 5 of them to the next step. What's going on here? Let's give you a bit of training. And that becomes the model by which the onboarding framework runs. So that's where you get your reverse engineered pipeline, your activity and your conversion KPIs, and your remuneration structure, giving them everything they need on a metric basis to understand what success looks like for you and for them, not just at the end of ramp up, but at all stages in between.
Now, what if I told you that with just 15 minutes of effort, you could find out the top 3 things that are going to hold your business back from scaling in a sustainable way so that you can fulfill its potential and you can enjoy it as much as you deserve to? And what if I told you in that same 15 minutes of effort, you can find out how your business stacks up against thousands of other businesses who've taken the same test so you can actually see how you compare? If that sounds interesting, you need to head straight over to scalehq.com.au/growth score. You're going to complete a short survey, and you're going to get back in your inbox a free 9-page report that's going to show you how you stack up versus your peers and where you need to focus to unlock scalability and a greater level of enjoyment in your business. And for a limited time, I'm going to offer you a free 30-minute debrief on the report where myself or one of our Scale HQ founder mentors, who are all experienced CEOs and have scaled successfully, will unpack your specific report with you. We've done hundreds of these, and so we know exactly how to help you get the most out of the insights in there. There's no selling from us, just lots of value for you. Head over to scalehq.com.au/growth score and get your free growth score report right now. You are going to love it. And can I say, as a sales leader, one of the things that I would always say to people, we always had this, formula up on the board, activity times conversion equals results. But if you don't do the activity consistently, then we have such a big variable. Like to your point, I'm not going to come rushing in to help you unless I know you're actually managing the activity. So manage the activity first, and then we can talk about support on the quality side, on the conversion component. Like I can get in and help you with the skill sets, but if you're not making the calls, then I'm not helping you in conversion. Like, you need to manage the input part of that process, make the phone calls. And then if you're making the phone calls, but they're not getting to the meetings, cool. Then I'll come and help you on the phone calls. But at least I know you're doing the requisite amount to make the pipeline work. So when you have those stages planned out, because you've actually tested them and built them yourself, then you're able to know how much it should take and know where to apply your effort and what effort might be missing 100%. On their side, or skill set 100%. Gap they might have on their side.
Yeah, and we've had so many examples like the one you said, Sean. We had back in 2019-20, we had a national company selling, architecturally designed kit homes, which was only 1 or 2 salespeople would ever hit quota each year. They were basically carrying the company nationally. And by doing what we said here, they were able to get everyone to hit quota, including all the existing people. More than that, when we hired for them, they were able to get those people up and running in several weeks, where it used to take months and months and months. And they were making their initial sales, what we call bridge sales, within 2 weeks, and selling full houses, even on Zoom and even through COVID, within 4 to 6. And that's, you need the system.
The value of the components. Yeah,
That's right. That's right.
What else are we missing?
Okay, so now we've got our metrics, we've got our remuneration structure, we've got our activity and conversion KPIs, and our quotas all sorted out. So we've got the basics for visibility. It's important that visibility is also reflected in dashboards. And for that, we need to ensure that there's a bit of data compliance. So we have to make sure that part of the training part includes data compliance of how you enter data into your CRM, etc. So putting that aside, another thing that we really need is we need a performance measurement agreement. Now, this one is a little bit like a job description, but it's got measurables for every single element of the role, because the metrics cover a lot, but they don't cover everything. We don't want our salespeople to be only focused on sales. We also want them to be focused on client experience, being good people, gathering the data we want, stuff like that. So it's all got to be in there so that in one page, a salesperson can see this is the role. That is a tool for management, which means that every week in the ramp up, you can go, yes, you did that, yes, you did that, yes, you did that, yes, you did that, right across the whole board of the salesperson's frameworks. So performance measurement agreement is really important. Another thing is that we need, sorry, what was that? Sure.
I like that. Yeah, absolutely. And to your point, it gives you the qualitative stuff that maybe also is not as easy in numbers, like the kind of the attitude, the way that they approach the role, to your point, the way they talk about their issues, how they're engaging in the team. Like, you got the ability to load in the behavioural stuff.
Behavioural stuff is key.
Hard numbers, because if you've ever been in a larger organisation, you'll find there's some top-level salespeople who are just assholes.
I was about to say, we've all had those salespeople who are a pain in the ass. And what do you do with them when they're making good money? But if you keep them, generally they affect everyone.
It's so hard.
Yeah,
they affect everybody negatively.
That's right.
And everyone hates them. And like you've got to have those other elements that are non-numeric, just quantitative number stuff. That's not enough.
That's right.
It's obviously important and it's a key outcome. But it can't just be done at all costs.
Like the big companies like Google and Facebook and all of those have proven how important culture is. You can't have anything eroding your culture. And I think the problem with those sorts of a-hole salespeople is that they then start to infect everyone, and they also do things that just don't align with the brand value. And there's nothing more important than the brand and the value and the company, what it stands for. So everyone's got to represent that. And so, really, really important stuff. And we have the sales directors in our team are superb at this. It's certainly not my area, but they're superb at negotiating with the salesperson that they're aligned to culture and vision. We had a company that was kind of that has a European and an Australian arm, and their sales team were kind of had a bit of an attitude, shall I say? They didn't fit in with the rest of all the team, and there was a bit of an us and them kind of feeling in there. And one of our sales directors really worked on changing that. And that meant bringing in those elements that were non-money based, non-metric based, and using those as performance tools. Yeah. Nice. So focusing on that, having that ready, it'll be one of the best things you ever do. And it's not just for salespeople. Everyone should have this for every role, but salespeople specifically. Then you touched on the next piece, and that's the ramp-up plan itself. So really, ramp up for a salesperson is like getting a plane off the ground. They literally have to, there's a pre-flight checklist. You need to tick it all off and get them in the air. And there's a few elements of that. There's everything from the actual conversations and the client interactions to the use of assets and tools, templates. Maybe they have to use presentation decks, ROI calculators, whatever it is they have to do, all the touch points that they have to do. There's also things like data compliance, making sure they fill in the data that helps you as a business leader to have a data-driven environment for your marketing, for your productization, all of that stuff. As well as that, there's training elements that are a bit more intangible and nebulous. Things like, understanding the different personas that your company works with and how they think and feel differently, because you may very, very well present the same solution to people wearing 3 different hats, and what John and Mary want from the same solution are completely different. And being able to understand and relate to them is really important. So that kind of detail, it should all be part of the onboarding ramp-up. So the way that we build an onboarding ramp-up and would recommend anyone to do is to have 3 sections, which is training, actions, and success outcomes. And each of those is in specific timeframes. So first 14 days, the first month, the second month, the third month. That's usually enough. Sometimes the 4th month, depends how complex your sales environment is. Could go up to 6 or more, but that's usually enough. And they really have to learn a little piece about each of these areas in the right time frame. And if you think about it, to make a salesperson financially viable, they need to start taking load off as soon as possible from the founders or the current business owners. The easiest way to do that is to train them in the easiest steps first, which is often the front-end steps like connecting and qualifying, and get them to own that step, and then to own the next step, and then to own the next step. So the onboarding plan kind of follows the pipeline of a salesperson in training and focus. And the idea is, let's make them independent, shall we say, in each one, and give them the tick of approval that, yes, you are at the level of quality that we need to let you approach our clients and speak to our precious, precious clients. And again, what's the cost of a single client? We recently worked with a financial services company in Sydney, and one of the things we did was we said, let's look at the value of a single lead, right? And we just did that for them, and they realized that it was a minimum of $5,000 for the smallest possible outcome, and that they were capable of converting it at a certain rate. And then they were like, do you really want anyone who's not trained to speak to any one of these ever?
And this is, to go back to my earlier point, this is why you have to build confidence and competence, to your point, across these pillars. You have to almost build it like almost like a brick wall, like you're having to lay the foundations from the bottom all the way up.
Yes.
And they can't just start at the top, and you are setting them up for failure if you put them in situations with expectations that are unrealistic where they're not yet confident enough, or they're not yet competent enough to do that well. You need them to succeed along the way. So they build more and more confidence like a snowball as they go through, because that, unfortunately they are, to your earlier point, that the confidence matters a hell of a lot. They're emotional beings generally, and they need confidence, and that comes from little wins all along the way. And that can just be ticking off the small things, and that's having those check-in points. To your point, okay, if I've just taught them 7 things this week, where's my opportunity for them to play back what they've learned from those 7 things, so I can actually check in that they've got it, that I haven't just assumed that it's happened. And that also builds their confidence. It's built their competence, but it's also built their confidence because they played it back to me and I've gone, hey, great job. That's excellent. You've got that. Now let's work on the next thing. Their confidence just went up. So it's about, I really like that idea of, and I think, I agree with you. Like 3 months is probably about the right onboarding plan period. You just can't expect them to, that doesn't mean they won't produce any results in the first 3 months, but you've still got more to teach them, even if they're starting to, generate some deals.
And that's why, the success metrics for month 1 and month 2 and month 3 are different, and 4, etc. We give them a period of time to ramp up to KPIs, and we focus on different KPIs for each month, and different conversion metrics too, as we're rising through the months. And as you say, not only do they build confidence, but they immediately contribute financially, which is a really big deal. So you don't have to wait till they've made the sale, because if they're taking some load off the existing performers immediately, there's already a financial benefit. And the worst thing that could happen, and I've seen this, is people will go up to 6 months with a salesperson, not sure whether they're doing well or not. Not only have they paid for the recruitment and paid for the wages, they've also paid a huge internal cost for their ad hoc training of all their sales managers and buddy up systems and all that. They've also burned probably 5 times that in leads. And that's by far the biggest cost and a hidden one. And we have a calculator for that. It's terrifying how much money a salesperson can lose you if you do this incorrectly.
Yep.
So don't go there. Absolutely. Train them in the ramp them up step by step. And the beauty of this is if you build it once, you can use it 100 times. And that's a really important thing for a scaling business, because very few businesses will hire one salesperson. As they grow, they'll want a second one and a third one and a fourth one and a fifth one. And all of this system, which provides training, guidance, and visibility, is the system that will do it for them. We have a national promotional merchandise company. We've hired them 20 people, and they just got like a plug and play system that we all know works. You just plug them in and it works, and they ramp it up. So it's what you need.
And so are there any other missing pieces or have we covered all what you'd consider kind of like the core elements that the business has got to have ready before they start going out and hiring?
But if we have the basic documentation of what happens at each stage, along with training resources, including recordings, dot pointed recordings, things that they can train themselves on, that takes a lot of pressure off the sales manager to train them up. Then, as I said, with the dashboard visibility, I think there's a few other areas that we need to work on, but that's more we're ready to go to hire. And what we do there is we don't want to just go in. We need a plan to hire, and we need clarity on, and the PMA helps with that, performance measurement agreement. Who is the person that's right for this role, and how are we going to assess their skills, and how are we going to make sure that they're a fit across all the different areas? So one of the things that we want to have set up, and this is separate to the hiring, which I know we're going to talk about later, is a practical assessment layer. I find that the practical assessment layer is the best and easiest way to be able to tell whether someone's a good fit or not than any other way that I've ever found. And we've tried a lot of different ways, believe me.
So the practical assessment layer is something that so once you've sort of designed this stuff on the essentially the sales sort of infrastructure, the sales foundations, you're saying you then create an assessment model that you then pull up to the front of the recruitment process so that you can essentially test for people's likelihood of succeeding in our model.
Correct. We had a website design company where the founder was really concerned about leaving his sales role because he realized how important and critical it was. And what we did, this was one of our first playbooks too, was we recorded the initial discovery call, really well with dot points and a framework. It was part of the training. And we got the finalists, shall we say, the short list, to do it. And one guy stood out. He sounded better than the boss. And he just got there. And he'd absorbed it. He could express it. He's still there. He's made the millions. The point is, you're taking so much risk out, because what do you learn in that? The one that we use now, it contains a portion of the process, but also contains an admin element and a thinking element. And what we see from that is we get rid of a lot of red flags. Do they learn? Do they listen? Can they express themselves well? Are they going to be good at the bookwork and the paperwork? Like, there's all those elements. So many problems that can occur can just be wiped out by that practical assessment.
Well, maybe what I'm wondering, if we've got it for a remaining few minutes, if we can grab that and move that into our recruitment, our next episode where we talk about the recruitment process, and we'll talk about that assessment model. Maybe you can give us an example, of one of those, kind of like a live one, so that people can kind of hear that in detail. That'd be awesome. But just, I guess, back onto the foundations. If you've just listened to this and you've gone, geez, I have none of that. And I'm massively overwhelmed because I've never done any of those things before. I don't want people listening to think that the only solution is to get a company like Emple. Clearly, that's what they do for a living. They're very good at it, and they know how to do that. But I think one of the things that you said to me up front, Talila, was even if founders had half of that stuff, which they can do, they'd have a massively higher chance of a salesperson succeeding than if they do none of it. So I don't want anyone listening to go, it's like all or nothing. Like, I have to do all of that perfectly, or I should do nothing, or I have to get an external company to help me. Yes, the reality is there is a lot of art and science when it comes to salespeople, doing well with salespeople, no question. That's why you have professional sales leaders, and that's why it's a whole thing.
Yes.
However, the founder needs to get conscious about, and if you don't know how to get the whole point, and Talila, you gave us some examples earlier where it's like you're using what success is already happening to unpack the framework, but kind of make it conscious, right? Like to bring it to the surface.
Yes.
I did this with a company probably the year before last. They were going to hire salespeople. I was like, great. You are going to record this is the founder. You're going to record, the next 7, 8, 9 sales calls. I want to see these stages of the process.
Exactly.
I want you to give them all to me, all the recordings. And then I just literally pulled out all the common elements. I turned it into a system. I, listened to more just to validate that's the way it was happening. I built them a sales training model around it. I built an assessment framework around it, and I taught that to the new salespeople that came in. And lo and behold, those salespeople have been incredibly successul. Why? Not because I'm a genius, because I was just modeling the founder. I was taking her excellence and teaching it to the new people that came in. There are definitely parts they probably still don't have and may have needed, but that alone was like, you're already doing something that's working. Get somebody from your organization or do it yourself, like record what it is that you're doing, because you're probably doing a whole bunch of it virtually, and figure out a way to unpack it, at least as a starting point, because you can't, if you don't, I always think it's almost like Apple. Apple's model of the world is, if you're a product business, you have to make the person who buys your product feel like a hero using your product. So you have to help them succeed. If you don't give them a training manual, if you don't, on Apples, why do they have those little mini tutorials to get you started feeling successful? So you don't look at the thing and just hit overwhelm. It's like a little thing to make you succeed in doing it. Now I've got a bit more confidence. Now I'll go and do more and I'll enjoy the product. You have to do the same thing with salespeople. You have to build their ability to feel like they can do this. You throw them in the deep end, or you think they're going to come with it all, they just don't come with it. So please don't listen to this and be overwhelmed. Just think about at least the most basic elements, which if I just boil some of those ones that you've talked down at a bare ass minimum, getting the actual calls and the call structure and sequence of the, if you've got a discovery call and then a presentation call, like getting all of that unpacked and sort of documented in the key bits.
Yes.
Probably making sure that the compensation plan, you have to think about that carefully, because essentially what you have to do is you have to think about second and third tier consequences. Whatever you put in place is going to drive a behavior towards or away from something. And salespeople are masters at looking for how you get around that thing and still achieve the goal or whatever it is. They're just sort of built that way. So if you incentivize them purely around revenue and you haven't thought about discounting or margin or anything like that, and they've got discounting control, well, all of a sudden you might find they discount 50% because they've just been given a revenue target. Great. But if actually margin's really important to you, then you need to put some controls. Maybe the incentive is based on gross margin. It's not based on revenue. So think about the compensation plan with some level of granularity and detail, and think about what it is setting them up to do. Is it going to make them lazy? Is it going to make them hungry? What is it going to make them want to? How will it make them act? And even if you only had those two basics, you're way ahead of people who haven't thought about it and who've hired a salesperson and hoped for the best.
Yes. And I would add to that too. Think about what you're paying them. Think about the cost of having them, cost of seat, and figure out how you're going to recoup that before you start paying them extra. So there's a threshold point at which you can afford to start becoming very generous with your salesperson. But before that threshold point, you really need to be able to protect the cost of having them there so that they're paying you back before, you're sharing revenue.
So here's the exercise, right? The exercise is get a P&L, or basically just build your salesperson as a P&L, right? They have a wage cost that is fixed, that is OPEX. Yes. They may have a laptop or a phone or a car or a bunch of other things. You're probably going to be feeding them leads. So you've got some time from the marketing person. You've got the actual cost of those leads. You've got the cost of designing any collateral or, whatever. Put all of those costs in. And you're going to have a number that you actually need to achieve in gross margin, not in revenue, gross margin, that's going to allow, because the cogs, the in between revenue and gross margin, are going to be chewed up in cogs of delivering whatever it is they've just sold. So it's only whatever's left in gross margin. That gross profit has to cover all of those costs before they break. So how many deals of what size are you going to need to just break even? I bet you if you've got multiple salespeople and you haven't run a P&L exercise, you've got people that are losing money every day.
That's correct.
You've got to do that exercise,
this forms a baseline for performance and also gives you more clarity on what success looks like. So you've got your KPIs where you want them to go, but you've also got your baseline where they can't go south of. And so that's exactly the exercise, Sean. Understand the cost of seat, the salesperson's cost to you, including everything that it costs to have them in that seat, and start your threshold from there and work it backwards in sales. So there's a few elements there. We do have a tool that we use with our clients, which identifies these things before they hire with us. It's a 15-minute tool. What I'm very happy to do is for anyone who wants some help and free help, I'm very happy to run them through the tool. It will give them a bit of an insight into what they ought to do. It's not super depthy, but it is depthy enough that that people will be able to read this and go, okay, these are the actions that I need to go and take before I go hiring someone. So if anyone would like to do that, they're very welcome to.
Well, yes. Where would you send people to? Because we are out of time. Until I've absolutely just loved this conversation, and I feel like there's probably like 7 episodes in here for us. And the next one we'll do is on the recruitment front end. And then let's just see where we get to. But where would you direct people to go to get access to that tool?
I'll give you a link if that's okay.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, go for it.
And I'll.
You can read it out, and we'll also put it in the show notes if you just email it to me.
Yes. So I haven't got it to read out. I apologize for that.
Okay.
I was
That's
going
fine.
to do
No
that.
worries.
But if I give it to you and you can put it in the show notes, that will work.
Yes.
Okay. And we do run people through it. So we talk them through it in 15 minutes. And then we give them a report. And the report is reasonably documented. So it's a very good starting point.
Awesome. Well, folks, I hope if you are a founder, I hope we have not left you feeling overwhelmed, but actually feeling like there's some stuff that you can go and do that's actually relatively simple, which is going to improve your chances of success. If you're listening to this and you're going, geez, I got a lot of work to do and I've got some existing salespeople and I haven't really set them up for success, sometimes it is too late, but it's not general. I wouldn't start with that thought. It's probably not too late to actually help them succeed. Start with the modeling of success, think about your compensation plan, think about how you are think about your input focus, what kind of conversations you might be having around the stuff that leads to outcomes as opposed to just worrying about the outcomes. And just as a starting point, that might get you moving. But clearly what you've heard today is there are a number of things that you really, if you want salespeople, if you want to get the optimal return on sales investment in a sales force, you just have to get these, that you have to do the work or hire someone to help you to do the work to get this stuff in place. It's just the reality. If you want to build a scalable business that has a scalable sales engine, you're going to have to do the work at some point. Someone's got to do it.
Yeah, and people put a lot of work into their marketing systems, so they understand that. It's the same thing, but it's even more impactful. And if there's only 3 things that I'd suggest everyone was to do, it would be to record their best performers' conversations at every stage of the way, including the way they enter data as well into the system, and use those as training tools, and use a part of that as an assessment for someone who's we're looking to hire. We'll go into that more later. But just doing that one thing is it's not that hard. Record what they're doing, transcribe it as well. That part will be the start of game-changing the situation.
Model success.
Yes.
That's what it is. I love that. Talila, thank you so much. Can you just direct if people wanted to get in touch or follow along with kind of the Ample journey? You're obviously we're going to have a link to the show notes to that specific tool. Where else would you, how would you encourage them to get in contact if they had any questions?
They can email me, talila@ample.com.au, or go to ample.com.au. Very welcome to, we are quite passionate about helping business owners. We feel like all the good things in the world come from the creativity of entrepreneurs and founders. We're also very big in social purpose founders. So founders that are trying to realize a vision, it takes a lot of passion to start a business. We're here to help and very, very willing to assist you without requirement of return, shall we say. So we'll give you a bit of insight wherever we can. So
Lovely. Thank you so much, Talila, and I look forward to our next conversation when we go up to the front of the process and unpack your sort of assessment model and what do you now look for when you're going, you got this stuff in place. How do you now go out and find a salesperson and do a good job of sifting through the professional interviewers that you're going to come up against, of which many salespeople are.
Salespeople can do good talking.
At interview one, they're good talkers. Right. And doesn't mean they can do anything afterwards. So there's some art in here as well.
Exactly.
Fabulous. All right. Well, I look forward to that conversation. Thanks so much for your time, Talila.
Thank you, Sean. My great pleasure.
The team here at Scale HQ hope you've enjoyed today's episode. Now, if you want to achieve scale, but you want to know what's going to hold you back, we can help. Head over to scalehq.com.au/growth score to get your free 9-page growth score report. That's going to help you understand where your top 3 barriers are to scale. And if you'd like, we'll even do a free debrief on the report for you with no obligations or expectations, just lots of value from some CEOs who've scaled to help you on your journey. That's scalehq.com.au/growth score and find out what's holding you back from fulfilling the potential of your business today.